both of these sets actually came out together. They were designed to complement each other, so therefore they work together really, really well, but obviously you can use them independently of each other as well. As with all of Lisa's products, very rarely are two sets so linked that you can't use them outside of the pair that they were made for. So they are two both really versatile sets, and both of them actually contain an awful lot of product as well. This particular set, the Nested Pocket Builder, is a set of dies. We have 22 dies in here, so there is an awful lot of variation, and I'll just pull those out for you. You can actually see how many dies you actually get. You get the 22, but there is so much there that this really is a real workhorse in your craft stash. So you can make anything from teeny tiny little pockets like this, which are about 2 inches wide, up to the largest one here, which is what I've used today and fits beautifully on the middle of a 5 by 5 inch square card. Plus you have all the incremental layers, so you really can build and play and make these as extravagant as you want. You have all of these other dies here, which all relate to the dressing of the pocket, I suppose. So you have the cuff, as it were. So you can either have the frilly top, or you can have a less ornamental top, or you can have a completely plain top, which I think is ideal for the guys. And then you have like the plackets that come over, and you can decorate them with either a button, or we have the little stitched hearts. And all of the dies bar this one, which is just a little bar that goes across the top, all have the stitched details. So the amount of detail that you're getting in all of these is perfect. And I think all of that stitch detail adds a really nice professional look to the finish of all your die cutting as well. And then we have the Floral Pocket Petals. Again, there is so much in this set, and this is a set of dies and coordinating stamps. And Lisa really hasn't scrimped on what she could fit into this set for us. She absolutely packed it full. And when you receive this, it's actually quite a chunky, really weighty envelope, this one. You'll get your set of dies. Now, my dies I put onto a magnetic carrier sheet to stop me losing them. What I've done, I've actually taken all of the flower dies out from when I was die cutting them, and I'll show you why I've done this in a second. But all of these dies, you have 8 flower dies plus 2 foliage dies and the centres of all the flowers. Now these centres are, you have 3 that are scalloped, these 3 here, and then you have 3 that are plain. Now you can just use them as tiny little circles, and that's actually a really useful thing to remember, that you have these, because if you just want little circles or little centres to flowers for other dies that you may not have the centres for, you can use them as eyes or bubbles. So they're actually really useful sets. So you have the dies, and then you have all of the stamps. Now let me just get a clear piece of card. These are all the stamps that you have. Again, there are 8 that aren't on here that I've been stamping with, and I'll show you those in a second. But you have 8 of the solid flowers, you have 8 of the polka dot flowers, plus all the centres that we have the dies for are stamps also. So there's so many stamps there. So say there's an awful lot of product here, and it's really like a contained set. Again, like the card that I made last week, you really only need to find yourself a sentiment, because you basically have everything within these 2 sets to make a complete card. The other sets that I've used, if you actually look at the card that I've made, let's just leave those there. We have the centre insert in the grey here, and the one on the outside is one of our trusted nesting sets. It's one that a lot of you will have. It's one that we always reach for again. It's the nested stitched bubble squares, and it's the larger set. I know that Lisa's brought out a smaller set now, which I think is going to work in conjunction with this really well. But this is the larger set. So all I've done is cut myself a layer of the bubbles and the internal layer for this one. For the inside of the card, I've done them in grey, and on the outside of the card, I've just done it in white. Now also you will see that there is an additional detail on the pocket here. I just wanted to do something a little bit different, and I decided to actually add some detail using another set that we probably don't see as often, but it is in stock on Lisa's website. It's the mini doilies. Now this again is sort of a really useful set actually. Ideal if you don't want a particularly themed card, because depending on how you layer these and what colours you use, they would actually be ideal for the guys cards. Let me just show you these dies briefly. So I just wanted to cut a pattern out of the pocket, so that's why I've used just the central part of these doily designs. Again, it's something that you can just add a little bit of detail. There are many different ways to decorate your pocket. You can emboss it, you can layer it up with lots of the different sizes of the pockets, you can stamp on it, you can use different colours, lots of different ways. I just wanted to do something a little bit different. And you know, it's like something sort of pops into your head and to give it a try. So yeah, we have a twisted easel card. So let me start and I'll talk you through how it was all made. I'm using a 5x5 inch square card, the size card as I always use, and I wanted to make a twisted easel card. So to make the twist on the easel, if I was actually, let's start from afresh, if I was going to make a normal easel card, I would have my card blank and I would score directly across the front of the card in a straight line and fold that up, and that would give us our traditional easel card, which would basically go like this, and we put our easel on the front like that. The twisted easel, as you can see, slightly different. So you need to align your card with the spine to the left as you would open it regularly. Then what you want to do is to score yourself a line from the bottom left up to the top right corner. And you need to give that, burnish that really well, so we have a really nice crisp crease. And that, you can see now, is how we achieve our twisted easel. Now, as with most easel cards, you do need a stopper for the card, which means you do need to decorate the inside of the card if you don't normally. I must admit, I'm not one who usually decorates the inside of the card. I usually just put an insert in with a sentiment. But obviously, because the inside of the card on this is on show, we do need to put something decorative here. So as I said, I've cut myself the bubble square layer and an additional layer on top of that, both in the same colour. And you can see here that I've actually used the mini doily again, just to cut myself out an insert. Again, that was just to add a little bit of detail. I didn't want anything of a different colour. I didn't want to have an embossed layer here, because if I were to give this card, then I'd want to be able to write on the inside. But if you wanted to create the detail on the inside of the card by embossing or stamping, then again, that is an option also. But I just wanted to add something a little bit different on the inside, and just by die cutting that doily pattern in the same colour, it just gives, I suppose it gives a bit of a debossed effect, in effect, doesn't it? So I'll put that layer on the inside, and we can put that aside just for now, and we'll start to construct our pocket. I'll just bring out the dies for the pockets here. I've done most of the die cutting already, so we have our different excuse me, we have our different elements here. Okay, so we've cut the largest pocket using, well, the largest die, but in a grey. Then we've cut the pocket in the next size down and in the white. And it's this layer that I wanted to add the detail of the doily. Now, in the one that I made here, I realised that I didn't actually put this pattern down, or this design down, far enough, because I'm actually cutting the top off of the of the pattern here, so that's why I wanted to wait just to when I was with you before I die cut this, for one, just to remind myself and just to point that out. It's just a little detail. Actually, it's a little detail you don't always know about until you've actually put the card together, and then you wish that you perhaps had done it different. So I've got that opportunity to change that now. So I'm going to die cut that. So I'm just going to sit that down as low as I can. Perhaps put that way. So I'm just making sure that's centre, and I can put that through my die cutting machine. Now. So you can see when I lift that off, it's actually left that design in the cardstock, which I think is a really nice touch. So now we have the top of the pocket like so. This one is cut from this die here. Now what Lisa has done, she's ensured that there is a top for each of the pockets, like the cuff of the pockets for each of the different size of the pockets. So obviously there's going to be some that don't fit some of the pockets. So if we take this cuff for example and we match that up, this cuff matches to this size of the pocket. So there is a different cuff for each of the different sizes. Obviously for some of the larger cuffs, like the one that I've used here, and the squarer, less ornate one, if you did want those to fit onto the smaller pockets, then you could actually cut those down. So you do have that little bit of variation as well. So we have the chance to put the pocket on there. Now, I was thinking earlier on how I was going to do this. I've actually 3D'd the pocket here because I like the dimension it gives. And I am going to do that now. I was going to put it straight onto the backing, but I will 3D it. But what I'm going to do is just to make sure this time around that I'm not going to put the 3D pads this high, because what that did, that stopped me from tucking some of the flowers into the pocket as I wanted to. So if I do it this way round, I think I'll be able to get around that. So I'm going to put my 3D pads on. That one doesn't fit on there, so I'm just going to take my scissors and snip that. And I do own some little scissors. Usually I use the large ones, don't I? But I do have little scissors. So there we are. I'm going to put that on there. Obviously we want to try and make sure that the pads aren't seen through the little apertures there. So bear with me. Make sure that's lined up. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so we have that dimension there. That means that I can add the pocket onto the top here. And I'm actually going to put the line of glue onto there. Because again, I'm conscious I want to keep the top of this pocket open here. So I can, well, it gives me the option to tuck some flowers in there when I come to add the florals a little bit later on. So you can see that that is open. Now we can decorate the top of this, or we can leave it plain. This is one of the floral cuffs, which although it doesn't go straight away across, I think that actually works quite well, because if you remember, we will actually have flowers around the outside. So I think that works okay. There is a lovely little detail here. Remember I said that this set also has a little die cut button and a couple of little buttonholes that you can use, but also has this cute little stitched heart as well. So I'm just going to add that into the centre there, and that's partly the reason why I chose this doily design, because it has this central panel here which enables me to add this little heart. Now it would be an ideal place to put a sentiment as well, and I've realised that I've forgotten to add a sentiment onto here, so that's something I'll do later on. So we have our little heart on there. So we have a really nice dimensional pocket that can fit onto the front of our cardstock. Sorry, the front of our card blank. So you can see, just as I bring that up to the card front here, you can see now how that will actually work with these twisted easels. And I think the easel cards are really nice because when you actually give them and the recipient takes them out of the envelope, they do actually look like a normal straightforward card. So it's really nice to just decorate it in this way. This one here obviously does extend past the 5x5, but you can get around that by putting it in a larger envelope, which I think most of us do have anyway if we have different size card blanks, or you can make your own custom made envelope for that also. Now before I get on to the flowers, I just want to make the card blank just ready to receive the rest of the decoration. Now I've cut myself another layer of the nested bubble squares, and it's exactly the same size as the grey layer on the inside. There's one of two ways I could do this. I can attach this to the front of the card and I can keep it intact like so. So when I actually open the easel card, we still have our solid card front. Or we can change that and we can cut this in half so we actually have the shaped detail of the pocket. So what I wanted to show you is if you wanted to actually split this layer to actually go in half to actually show the shape of the easel, it's easy done. We just need to take a trimmer, and what we need to do is just make sure that we cut this as precisely as you can, directly in half and diagonally. So you can take a trimmer or you take a knife, your preferred way of doing that, and we just slice that down the middle. So now we can add this to the front of the card blank. Now when you add this, what I will say is that when you've made this score line on the front of your card blank, it is probably about 1 millimetre in thickness. You know, there is actually a width to that score line, isn't there? What you want to do is to actually line up your two halves on either side of that score line. So when you actually bring this back together, you're not making that complete again, so it's entirely intact. There will be this little tram line that runs through the middle. What that enables you to do is it enables that score line of the card to actually function properly. You can still line up these two halves best you can because you still get the nice matte and layer effect all around the outside, but you have this tram line in the middle. But as I say, what it enables you to do is to actually still open and close that card without any hindrance at all. That tram line again is actually hidden, so if you're worried about sort of the detailing of this, by the time you've decorated the card and you've put your focal images on the front here, you won't actually see that tram line there. But if you've made a nice clean cut on one of your trimmers, I don't think that makes that'll make any difference at all. So now we can actually come to decorating our card. The way that I found this easiest to do is actually add your pocket on first. Now remember that when you're adding your pocket, only half of this is actually attached to the card blank, so it's that half that you actually want to apply the glue onto. You don't want any glue to be appearing on the back of this part, because when you come to close the card, it's going to stick and you've lost your easel shape there. So there is, I mean, if you forget to do that, there is one way that you can just remind yourself. You can just line up the pocket where you want that to be on the front, hold it there and keep the card folded, and just take a pencil, just make a little mark of where your easel fold will be. When I take that away, you can see that I don't want to add any glue onto that top half there. And it gives me that nice line to line up. So when I come to put this back onto the card front, I know that I'm not going to have an excess of glue behind this part of the pocket there. And at this stage we can fold the card up, and you can see now that we've got no hindrance, and we still have a really pretty card, and it's closed full like this, which is how it would appear when it comes out of the envelope, of course. So now we can go on to our flowers. Now you'll see here that these flowers, I've actually used a coloured cardstock, and I've stamped onto the cardstock, and I've used the polka dot flowers. And if I'll show you these ones actually. These are the ones that I didn't use on the card. And hopefully, if the light catches them well enough, you'll see that I've used the interference inks, because there is a really nice shine coming from the mica that has dried. And because I've done this a while ago and the mica has dried, it's really come to the forefront and added a real sparkle to those flowers. I'll perhaps show you it better on those ones in a second. Now I'm a real fan of stamping tone on tone, so I've used a blue ink. I've used the Sapphire Gold interference to stamp onto the blue cardstock, and I've used the Sweet Treat shimmer to stamp onto the yellow cardstock, because if you remember that on the left hand side of the ink pad that is the colour of the ink stamping onto a white card or a lighter cardstock, so I knew that I'd be able to stamp the yellow onto a yellow cardstock, and that's given me a really nice impression. The card that I'll be using, the flowers that I'll be using to finish this card off, I've actually stamped onto white cardstock, and I've used the other set of stamps where you're actually getting more colour from the stamps, the more solid stamps. And if I show you those flowers, actually, this is where you can actually see that mica come into play. Yeah, I can just see that. That's really caught that colour there. And even on the yellow as well, you get a slight pink hue to that. So hopefully you can see that. So if you really want to use the beauty of those interference inks, this is a really good set of ink stamps to use. Now I wanted to stamp all of the flowers all together, because I didn't know how many I was going to use, but you can of course just stamp them individually, but I stamped them all together, which then allowed me to die cut them all together. And you can see here that on the stamping platform on the Ultimate that I have all of my stamps still in line. Now this is the beauty of using the stamping platforms. It meant that I could stamp out 4 sets of flowers, and the stamps didn't move, and I knew that I could actually do this quite quick. And you can see here that each of the colours that I've cut this out from, I've done it in exactly the same way. And if I layer those up together, you'll see that I didn't move the stamps at all. Now obviously, even when I went to change the colours, all I done was put the card that I was going to use next time round, I laid that back onto the stamping platform. I picked up the stamp. That's the wrong way around. Let me do it that way. Yeah, I picked up the stamp. I lined it up with one that I'd already die cut before, so that I knew that it'd be in the same place, and I'd done that the same with each of the 8 stamps. Then I picked up the stamps again and took my cardstock away, and I knew that those stamps were going to be in the same place. So it meant that to prep, I could cut all the pieces of cardstock in exactly the same size and just put them down, and I knew that I could stamp them. And it also meant that when I came to die cut them, I only really needed to line up the dies once, because the dies come to you separately. They aren't connected like some of these sets that Lisa gives to us. So I had to, on the first time round, this is where we actually took the time. I actually had to line up all the dies to what I'd stamped, which is fine. I knew I'd have to do that. But because I'd attached the dies to each other, I could, once one set was cut out, I could just carefully remove them as connected as they are, and I knew that I'd be able to take that to the next piece of cardstock, line it up to what I'd stamped, and I could stamp away. And that was actually a lot quicker because I was able to attach the dies in pairs, and it meant that I didn't have to rearrange the stamps and just organise them around. So if you were going to be using this set as a batch making set, that's like a really useful tip to have. So that is how I managed to die cut myself so many flowers all at once, which is why I wanted to use these ones, which will give me a completely different look. Again, if I take this size flower, the same die will cut out both the polka dot stamps and it will cut out the solid stamps as well. So what I can do now, I can start arranging the flowers within the pocket, and you can see now the benefit of leaving just the top of the pocket open so I can attach the flowers on the inside. And the easiest way to do that was just to take a little bit of glue and just arrange them like you would perhaps arrange a flower arrangement. And we can just take the flowers and we just start arranging it with what looks nice to the eye. You can have as little or as much as you like. And of course you don't have to use these flowers. If you have other floral stamps in your stash, then they would work equally as well. I think that's why these pockets are so versatile actually. All sorts you can fit into them. Don't forget your foliage in there. Now, because the pocket is standing free of anything here, there is going to be a lot of dimension, so some of these flowers I will actually be attaching to the back of other flowers, like so. And I did let go of the fact that some of these flowers will actually extend beyond the card blank, and I thought that actually isn't too much of an issue. It's not too much of a bother. It adds to the interest of the card, I think. So we can do that. Adding our foliage as well gives us a different dimension, and that actually brings in a different colour, doesn't it? Aspect of colour. So I've gone with a really pale green for this because I didn't want that to really stand out too much. And I'm just going to add the flowers to the front of the pocket as well, because that will actually hide that this grey section doesn't quite fit across the width of the pocket. So we can just build up our details. Now obviously some of the flowers you're going to need to put the adhesive on the front and attach it that way. And these flowers are actually sturdy enough to be able to build your detail in this way, I think. So we can put that on the front. We can add a bit of foliage there as well. Now this is where you can get really creative. I think sometimes as well it might actually be nice just to add more foliage to this design as well. I think that would work really well, and I know Lisa's brought out lots of different foliage dies as well, hasn't she? So I think they would work equally as well. So I'm just going to layer that up between the flowers like that. You could, of course, mix and match the polka dot flowers with these stripy ones as well. But I think I might just stick with one or the other of these for this card. We can add like that. Okay, and maybe I don't know, maybe one more there, or maybe I might just leave it like that. I think that actually looks quite nice. So therefore, there we are. We didn't actually need to use all of the flowers, but you know what, sometimes it's good just to, it's always good to stamp more than you need, and then you can keep the rest in the pocket of the envelope there. So we do need a stopper for the card also. So remember the little circles that we had in this die set here? They are just perfect for that. Again, this one just extends past your square envelope a little bit, so you would need to find a bigger envelope for that, and of course you would need to put a sentiment on there as well. But I thought that was a really nice way just to use everything in the floral pockets set there, because say we've used all the flowers, you've used all the florals. You can go ahead and embellish this more by putting little pearls into the centre of the flowers. There's so much you can do, but I'd say it's just, I think just as it is, just these two sets on their own really do make a perfect card by themselves. So just by adding a sentiment, a simple sentiment on there, that would finish the card off really nice. Thanks so much for joining me this afternoon. I've actually really enjoyed that today. I hope you enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll see you again next week. Take care.